Good evening and welcome back to Formula Racing League's coverage of the SuperSprint Sunday Championship. It's round three at Zolder and it's brought to you by SIMNET for all your sim racing, sim rig goodies and accessories. They are the place to go. I'm Jack Prentice and we're really into the meat of the season as we come to Belgium. Circuit Zolder, about a half an hour drive from the Dutch border. And with this being in Belgium, it's only fitting that I talk an absolute waffle about what's going on today. So, if you're new to the championship and if you're new to the series, then a couple of things to explain. So, the drivers are all separated into classes. There's an overall championship going on, but they are predominantly fighting for class honours. So that's Pro, for the numbers in the silver grey, light grey, if you like, background. Silver with the much darker grey background, and the AM class, which you can see with Jeffrey the Fuss and Greg Wood as an example, are in red. And all of those have got to fight for position, not only with the other cars from their category, but also, as I mentioned, overall, the overall championship as well, which is starting to take shape. We see Chris Getman launching himself into Darren Townsend there in the pink McLaren. That won't be comfortable for anyone involved there as we try to see if we can see some track action for the next 20 or so minutes. We're slightly later than build with a couple of technical issues, because why wouldn't you be? To be honest, it's one of those things that comes to all streamers and all commentators, but I'm pleased to say that we are back and underway, and we're back just in time as we go into the one-shot qualifying that's going to come up in just a few minutes' time as all the drivers start to finish their laps. We've got a one-shot qualifying, which means that if you start your lap, you must finish it there. You do not get another go. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but we go to the Drivers' Championship standings, and we're going to start with the Pro class. Now, Jared Vermeulen is top, and he's top at the moment by a fair distance. He's got 13 points over Daniel Crossman. This was a man, Vermeulen, who was not actually scheduled to take part in this full time, but some circumstances have come his way, and the South African driver who dominated in the last couple of seasons is back for another go. He leads in the Ferrari, 182 points. He's 3 points clear of Daniel Crossman in, guess what, a Ferrari. You'll see a lot of these in the certainly in the Pro category. He's on 169 points, 6 points clear of Damian van der Waal. It's been those three really that have dominated the podium steps, with Josh Clayton in fourth. A good nearly 20 points, 19 points and 144 in fourth position. He's ahead of Martin Brusselli in the Porsche, who is the combative Canadian, has had more than his fair share of bad luck. And they are just about clear of Maximilian Basler in sixth position. Andrew Eden is in seventh in the Lexus, ahead of Wouter Heymans, who's had a lot of battles actually with Crossman, but he's had a couple of times where he's come a cropper, especially last week in Bathurst. Otman El Fidawi is in ninth, ahead of Sieb Desert and Vaclav Boschbigil, with Fabio Travaglioli, who's second in Brett, as you can see there, in 11th place. Morgan Grace is in 12th, ahead of Johnny Sharp, with Reece Dinn a non-starter. You go into the Silver Championship, and it's after a couple of wins last time out. Gordon Brown, who won the feature race but lost in some pretty awful circumstances the sprint race in the Ferrari. He's top on 138 points, 24 points clear of the championship debutant Terry Tierney, mistakenly known as Thomas from Kyalami, you may remember from the first round. He's ahead of Rinat Serfontein, the South African, in the Ferrari, who's level on points with Chris Getman. Consistency is the aim for Chris Getman. In fourth position, has not been too high nor too low. They're ahead of Serafino, Gabino and Jordan Marshall in fifth and sixth, ahead of Luke Richings in seventh in the Ferrari, with Alexander Kalugin stepping up to the championship in eighth position. Richard Gimman is in ninth, ahead of Lee Colpitts, the championship contender last time out. Maximilian Mourniweg and Marco Lino ahead of Michel van der Waal and James O'Leary to complete your running order in silver. Greg, we go to the AM class now as the drivers do come out onto the circuit. We're going to go to car number 33, Richard Gimman, who is the lead driver ahead of Jared Vermeulen, you can see there. So two pretty heavy hitters in the Ferraris out first of all in the slightly earlier qualifying times, you can see here. We've got enough time to reel out the AM category, and that is led by Greg Wood. He's got a nearly 30-point lead in the AM category in the Aston Martin. Former commentator, of course, Greg Wood, formerly of this parish. He is on 114 points, but he's 27 points clear of Dreadlock Steve in the Aston Martin. So Aston Martin first and second in the AM class. Darren Townsend is ahead of Jeffrey DeFast by just 2 points for the third place in the AM class, as they two McLarens battle it out for the final podium, with Michael Coppens and Miguel Silva just behind him 5th and 6th. Jack Barnett is 7th ahead of Owen Harris, who's had no shortage of bad luck, with Paul Trotman in 9th ahead of Vian Kruger in 10th. Doug Geller is in 11th, having made a pretty late start to the championship through injury, with Jochen Barrett in 12th, Ryan Fegan, Darren Monk Davis, JB Thacker, who has twice been crashed or has crashed from leading positions, bringing up the rear. So Thacker in a very false position there as we look at Richard Gearman. Now going into the turn 5 chicane, known for its rather heavy curves. Can't quite see it there, but you can see the Ferrari bouncing its way all over the curves. Now going into the forest, up the hill, over the crest, back down the hill into what is officially known as turn 7, but it is 3 apexes at that chicane. You can actually cut quite a bit there. In fact, you can see some of the cones have already been dislodged as racing drivers try and gain as much of an advantage as possible. Richard Gearman running slightly wide there. You don't want to do that too much because the wall sucks you in if you go even slightly wider than that, but the Dutchman brings it all back under control going into turn 8 at the X-hairpin. A slight kink left to right before you head down to the final chicane. We are going to get our first couple of times on the board. I remind you, this is the only lap time that they are allowed to set, so the curb, but not too hard. You want to have a bit of a run through the final apex. Now it's going to keep the car hopefully to the left hand side for the shortest run possible. Richard Gearman is going to go up into first position on a 1:29.1. That's a good lap time, but we're expecting it to be beaten, and we are seeing it beaten by Jared Vermeulen, 27.9. 7/10 of a second off where he went a little bit earlier on. Car 71, I think, is next across the line. So we should see that. It's Michel van der Waal, as no, it isn't, because it's Greg Wood up into third position ahead of the pro driver Marco Brustulli. Brustulli not on the best of laps there, as Steve Desert now crosses the line. Another one to go behind the AM driver, so a good lap time there. Jamie Thacker goes second in the AM class, as Michael Coppens is in 7th. Jordan Marshall goes up into 7th now, as Richard Gearman whereas Steve Desert goes ahead up into 6th position. Trying to get up areas now as car number 96 crosses the line, and that is what we can't quite see, as Lee Colbitz now goes through. I think that's car 79. Chris Gebman is coming over to start a lap rather than finish. He is indeed going to go 9th position. He's going to finish his lap time, and he goes up into 2nd in the AM class. Car number 44 is next across the line. So there's been another move from Checkers, Vian Kruger and Miguel Silva round out the top 15 for the moment. We're now looking, I think, at car 71. Who's that? Can't quite see it at the moment. It's Michel van der Waal, who is now coming across the line to start his lap time. 4:33 we're expecting across the line, and that is not to start his lap time, but 3:34 now crosses the line, and again that is not to start the lap time. So looking, I think, at Brustulli, he's finished his lap, so he will be coming into the pits. So car 139, bit of time to find him, hopefully, as that is Terry Tierney, the tank engine, as I shall officially call him after calling him Thomas throughout the start of the racing at Kyle Army. Now the Aston Martin brings it over to the left-hand side. This is a competitive lap time, but how competitive is it? It goes 10, so he's third in silver at the moment, 2 seconds off the pace of Chris Gebman. Oh no, not of Chris Gebman, of Jared Vermeulen, but he's the 10th off of the pace of Chris Gebman. So good lap time there from Terry Tierney, the Irishman on debut in championship, gets himself into 3rd position. Car 215 is where we go next, if I can see him anyway. Our 215 is going to finish the lap time. I think that's Renard Serfontaine, but for the life of me, can't quite see. So we're not going to go and see him. We're going to go and see car number 94, which is Lee Colbitz, who's going through the final chicane about now. We'll look out for car 215 as he appears on the timing screens. That should be Renard Serfontaine, and it goes 8th position, so 2nd in class for the South African. Lee Colbitz is going to start his lap time, of course he is, and we'll see now car 433 across the line. We should see car 334 now coming up. It's a bit ominous from myself going to Alexander Kalugin now across the line. He goes up into 9th, so that is 2nd in what is getting a very tight and twisty silver class. He goes up into 9th. The Russian, who has graduated from the AM class, the success story of last season's Morgan Grace, crosses the line to begin his lap time. Now we've got car 104 coming across the line. That is Luke Richings, another man to begin rather than end. 884 is Andrew Eden. He's again beginning rather than ending, and it's now car 898, I think, is just across the line as well. So plenty of drivers were starting their lap time. Of course, it being a one-shot qualifying session means that they've only got one go at this. So it's car 41 next. That is Fabio Travaglioli. Now, he went quicker, actually, than Vermeulen's pole time, although he was a couple of tenths off of the South African earlier on. Where's the Italian going to be, having had a quick but ultimately erratic start to his season up in Bathurst? It is going to be nowhere at the moment. Josh Clayton now coming across the line to start, we think. So we're going to go to Lee Colpitts. Colpitts, championship contender in the BMW in silver class last time out, but the pink BMW gets a little bit shaky coming out in the final corner. Keeps the car to the left-hand side. The Brit, where is he going to put this? He puts it 19th, so that is quite far down in the silver class. He'll be expecting a little bit higher than that as he goes up into 9th, I think it is. It's car 19 now across the line, and I think that is Serafino Gabino, who's just starting his lap. So of course, he is Dale Kelleher now coming across the line in the Ferrari in the AM class, and he goes up into 21st, so he goes ahead of Kruger and Silver, with Simon Greaves coming across the line as well to go up into 22nd. He's quickly disposed by, I think, Jamie Thacker, who's gone 16th. Very impressive in the AM class. Car 884 is Andrew Eden, and where has he gone on the system? He's not gone anywhere except across the line. So Andrew Eden and Ottman El Fadawi are across the line. Eden goes up into 9th, El Fadawi 2nd overall. So excellent stuff from the Italian, who made his soft debut as a reserve last time out. Vaclav Pospisil's next across the line, coming out of the chicane. Coming across the line we go, and this should be good from the Czech driver. He pulls it over to the right-hand side, so not got the shortest line possible. That's because he's making a start rather than an end. It's Josh Clayton next to finish his lap time in the Ford Mustang. He usually found in an Aston Martin. He goes up into 7th place, just behind the pole sitter from Silver. That's Richard Gearman. Car 69 now across the line. That is Johnny Sharp. Where does Johnny Sharp go? He goes nowhere. Not at this moment in time. It's car 27, I think, is just setting his lap time down. Mark Davies is going to finish. So we go to Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown weaving, warming his tyres up, so that's definitely not going to be a qualifying lap time. So it's Darren Townsend behind car number 9, I think, is on an in-lap. Jack Barnett, meanwhile, car number 13, is not on an in-lap. He is on either an out or he's on a fast. So we'll see what happens and where he pulls the car over to the left-hand side. Is he going to keep it to the left? He is not. I think this is going to be starting rather than ending. And where does Barnett go if he does end? Nowhere, so it is a start of a lap. So it's going to be car 34. That's Pospisil that we were on board with a little bit earlier on, going through the hairpin at turn number 8. And the cam not that fast to catch through, so you go missing round the curbs that you see at turn number 5. But where is the Porsche going to go? He's going to keep it to the left, 14th, so well towards the back of the Pro class. But Pospisil can certainly go racing from there. He's ahead of Van der Vaart. Debbie Van der Vaart's an absolute nightmare in the Ferrari, and had been up in the podium sessions, or in the podium placing, sorry. And so far, awful start, awful qualifying as Johnny Sharp goes up into 6th. That's certainly not awful. Car number 27 next across the line, that is Darren Mark Davies, and he goes, well, he's 4.5 seconds off the pace in 33rd, but he has crucially set a lap time. So another Formula driver of this parish, and of this parish I mean the commentating parish, he is going to be able to go racing from there. Gordon Brown now the leader of the silver class. Where's this going to be? Respected this to be fast, and it is. It's pole, and it's by less than 200ths of a second in the silver class. Excellent stuff from the Flying Scotsman, and he'll be rightly pleased to be up into the top 6 once again. Jack Barnett comes across the line now, and that is going to be all she wrote, and he's 34th, so he shares the 17th row with Big Old Silver, and he deposes Darren Mark Davies with Serafino Gabino, Dreadlock Steve, Paul Trotman and Ryan Fegan all failing to set a lap time. It's going to be particularly painful for Serafino Gabino. It's Fabio Travaglioli takes pole position. So we didn't see that from the Italian, who's been threatening it. He certainly threatened it, more than threatened it in Bathurst. He actually took pole position, but never quite was able to convert that into a victory, certainly not in the feature race where it all went a bit south for the Italian. But the two Ferrari hotshots, Fabio Travaglioli, who has had previous with Jaron Vermeulen in this championship before, they are sharing row number 1 with Ottman El Fadawi and Daniel Grossman following up behind them. So we'll just take you through your grid for the next couple of moments, and that is as follows. So Fabio Travaglioni starts on pole position ahead of Jared Vermeulen, with Othman El Fidawi third ahead of Daniel Crossman, winner obviously in race number 1 at Kyalami. Morgan Grace is fifth, and that's season's best for the Welshman, ahead of Johnny Sharp, to make it an all-Ferrari Pro top 6. More Ferraris in the top 10 as Gordon Brown and Richard Gearman share the silver front row and are 7th and 8th on row number 4, with Josh Clayton, the first non-Ferrari, in 9th. 2 AMs are on row, well, are in 10th and 11th. That is Greg Wood and Jeffrey DeFast, with Marco Brusciulli in 12th ahead of Andrew Eden. So 2 pros starting behind 2 AMs could get quite tasty going into the first corner of race number 1. Steve Desert is in 14th ahead of Michel van der Waal. Van der Waal Senior getting one over on Van der Waal Junior. Vaclav Pospisil was 16th ahead of Alexander Kalugin in 17th, with Bernard Serfontaine in 18th. So 5th in the silver class it is for the South African, who has shown flashes of pace but has not been able to get it together on this occasion. Owen Harris is in 3rd in the AM class, so again continues strong qualifying even if he's had some difficulty in the races. Chris Gedman is in 20th ahead of Terry Tierney and Jordan Marshall, so silvers populating that area of the grid quite heavily. Jamie Thacker is in 23rd and 4th in the AM class, ahead of Temi and Van der Waal. We'll have to find out what happens to Van der Waal there, because 2.5 seconds is not the usual deficit that we see for the Dutchman there. Luke Richings, done it again. Luke Richings will start from 25th ahead of Darren Townsend in the pink McLaren in 26th, with Michael Coppens in 27th ahead of Marco Lino. The Colpitts is in 29th ahead of Reeves the Reserve in the silver category, with Dale Kelleher in 31st ahead of Vian Kruger and Miguel Silva. Jack Barnett and Darren Mark Davies in 35th. As I said earlier, Serafino Gabino in 36th, Redlock Steve, Paul Trotman and Ryan Fegan unable to set a lap time. So we've got 2 sprint races. No need for strategy here. You don't need to pit. You don't need to do anything in terms of setting your car up for the long haul, because the first race especially is a 20-minute sprint. So we're expecting about 1 minute 30 laps. So we would expect about 16 laps once they've been able to get going, because 1 minute 27 is what we were seeing in practice a little bit earlier on. So I would expect that there will be 16 laps based upon that. And it's Fabio Travaglioni starting from pole position. Now, the Italian started from pole last time out at Bathurst, but the first race he was able to hold off Jared Vermeulen, certainly until problems hit. But in the second race, Vermeulen was able to get past him by going around the outside and being quite brave on Travaglioni. In fact, no, that was the other way around, wasn't it? Vermeulen got him in race number 1, Travaglioni got him on race number 2, but Travaglioni struggling to keep the South African behind in race number 2 and ended up crashing on the mountain whilst lapping another car. Should be no such issues here, because there's a few straights in which a lapped car, if you get one, can get out of the way, but Travaglioni there will hope to have the race under control by then. He's got the advantage going into turn number 1, obviously being on the inside as it's quite a narrow surface, but he's going to need to have the drop on Vermeulen, I would wager, going into turn number 2, which is a tight right-hander that opens up on the exit, and you've got 2 or 3 more right-handers. If you're side by side through turn number 4, then I would wager the car on the inside, which would be Vermeulen, would be at an advantage. So 1 minute to go before the lights out, and we'll take just a very short break.
Seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
we're seeing two drivers, Steve Desert and Michel van der Waal, not any that I'm aware of that had suspensions and penalties. Desert had collected a few penalty points, starting from the pit lane. It's a disaster for them, especially as it's quite a long pit lane. He certainly don't want to be starting in the wrong area there, but we'll pick that up later on because Travaglioli leading Vermeulen down the straight. So down the inside, waiting for green. And there it is, green light. And Travaglioli does not get a good start at all. Jared Vermeulen gets a drop on Travaglioli. Now, I think the South African's going to have it. Yes, he's certainly ahead going into turn number 2 and through turn number 1. And Vermeulen should be able to block pass and block his way ahead of Travaglioli. Travaglioli coming up the inside, try and get the inside. He has got the inside going into turn number 4, but not enough as Vermeulen drops it on Travaglioli. So already a change for the leader. The championship leader does what the championship leader does. And he does run slightly wide. Don't know if there was contact, but they're going to go side by side into the chicane. Daniel Crossman still third ahead of Omat El Fidawi, and they're going side by side through the chicane. There's contact. Travaglioli goes round, and Vermeulen goes off, and into the lead goes Daniel Crossman. He profited once before from issues and errors from the leaders, and that's a big one. I think Vermeulen has dropped to 4th and Travaglioli's dropped to, he might as well be 44th. The Italian is out. I think he's been collected by Gordon Brown amongst others, car 71. That's Van der Waal. Omat El Fidawi is in second ahead of Johnny Sharp, and Vermeulen is in 4th position. We'll probably hear from that a bit earlier on as Sharp goes wide going into turn number 8, and I think that's let Vermeulen through. It has. Richard Gearman, meanwhile, has a commanding lead in the silver class. Jeffrey DeFast has also profited from issues from those ahead. He's in 7th ahead of Josh Clayton in 6th position. Chris Gedman is in 8th in the silver class. He's come off from 20th, I think he was, in Scotland. Had a dream start, hasn't he? Well done to Chris Gedman. He's up into 2nd already with Bruce Chully in 9th and Demian van der Waal in 10th. So the horrible qualifying session for van der Waal, in which he was in the 20s, has not done him too much harm, as I think there's going to be more repercussions and what have yous from turn number 5, from the leading duo. We'll certainly find out what's happened there, because Travaglioli, one of the more combustible characters, has probably going to have a point to say in the stewards, and possibly knowing him in the Discord. But we're not going to focus on that now, because Crossman has got an unexpected chance to lead. He was 2nd off earlier on, and now El Fidawi thinks he might have an unexpected chance to lead. They go into the turn 7 chicane, and I say turn 7, it's listed as that despite the 3 apexes. All the cones have gone already, and El Fidawi now is all over Crossman like a cheap suit. Now Crossman, who is shown, he's one of the youngest drivers on this grid. He's shown maturity beyond his years throughout most of his driving, as El Fidawi has a little look down the inside there, and he's not normally one to pass up an opportunity. So We'll take you through the order in just a second once everything's settled down. But Daniel Crossman has got a bit of a train behind him, and I think El Fidawi might be doubly important to keep El Fidawi behind Crossman, because Crossman, who has just made a mistake coming out of the chicane, now El Fidawi's going to have a look to the inside. No, goes to the outside. Crossman says, you're not coming down the inside, you'll have to go around the outside. El Fidawi says, okay, then I will. And he does. There's contact now. Vermeulen's going to have a look as well. They're going to go 3 wide going into turn 2. No, they're not. The South African backs out. But El Fidawi again buffets his way past, and he's into the lead now. Crossman's dropped to 3rd, because guess who has got up into 2nd? That is Jared Vermeulen. He's going to have a look down the inside going into turn 4. He does not make the move into turn 4, and now there's going to be possibly another overtake going into the chicane. We saw how badly this went earlier on, but I think Vermeulen's going to think better of it. Johnny Sharp's not out of this either, going into the chicane as they spread out a little bit. You can see Sharp going well over the chicane there, not the fastest way through because of the bumps and the sleeping policeman, and it feels like you're driving over Mont Blanc. But the 4 Ferraris, 5 if you count Richard Gearman in the silver class, has done an excellent job so far. He's staying with these as well, so it's certainly not by accident these up there. But these 4 Ferraris are probably going to be the story of the day. So El Fidawi leads ahead of Jared Vermeulen. He's 2nd ahead of Daniel Crossman, who was buffeted and bruised and beaten up out of the way in 3rd position. I don't think he'll be too happy with that, but rubbing is bracing. Johnny Sharp is in 4th position now. So that represents a real return to form for the Englishman as he goes off and lawn mowing and That's not going to hurt him too badly. It's not going to help him, but it's not going to hurt him. Richard Gearman is in 5th, leading the silver class ahead of Johnny Clayton in 6th, with Josh Clayton in 6th, not the dart player. That's Josh Clayton as he goes off, and that's Richard Gearman off. But no real issues. He loses out to Josh Clayton. I start to think darts on the brain here. Josh Clayton goes up into 5th position as Richard Gearman goes off. But crucially for Richard Gearman, he does not lose the silver lead. He's got Jeffrey DeFast behind him and Chris Gebman in 8th. So DeFast again making a good start. He just needs to hang on to it, which he found a bit more difficult at Bathurst last week, the Belgian on home soil. Markley Brustulli is in 9th, ahead of Damian van der Vos. So Brustulli 6th in pro, but 9th on the road. Greg Wood, who has recovered, I think, from the issues that affected him a little bit earlier on, he's in 11th, ahead of Renard Serfontaine and Owen Harris. So still, despite losing ground to DeFast, it's not a disaster for Wood, the former commentator in the Aston Martin, with Serfontaine in 12th in an AM sandwich. Owen Harris, another former commentator, in 13th and 3rd in the AM class, as Brustulli's actually gone off and is having a look back again at Van der Waal. Those two would swap positions unseen by us. Andrew Eden's in 14th, ahead of Jordan Marshall, with Darren Townsend struggling through illness and a lack of practice, but that is being belied here because the Welshman has done rather well to get up into 4th place now in the AM class, 16th overall. Richings is in 17th, ahead of Alexander Kalugin in the McLaren. And that's Vaclav Pospisil. Pospisil again going backwards at the start, being a bit of an Achilles heel for the Czech driver, who's gone off and into the weeds and might be under threat from Michael Coppens. Coppens now across the line, 7/10. Won't be close enough, I don't think. Coppens, who is in 5th in the AM class, ahead of Jamie Thacker, who's having a bit of a return to luck there. The black and grey Ford Mustang, the livery I was likened to the old Craig Lowndes livery, if you know the V8 supercars from that era. The Colpitts, meanwhile, is in 22nd, ahead of Marco Lino and Serafino Cabino climbing up from 36th odd. And Fabio Travaglioli, well, his race is wrecked. He's 27th. He's got ahead of Vian Kruger. And Morgan Grayson was 5th. His race has also gone in the Kazi, hasn't it? Because he's 29th. And, he's 28th, so he's not much better. As off goes Jack Barnett from 25th, so that's 25th for Travaglioli and 27th out for Morgan Grace. Jack Barnett having a little chat with the barrier there, with Shell van der Waal, the Big L Silver following through. Steve Desairs, another pro driver that's gone backwards, and Terry Tierney and Gordon Brown are towards the back. So Gordon Brown was caught up, I think, in the lap 1 shenanigans. Can't help but feel that Tierney, who was a lot higher up than 38th, is another victim of that, as we go to the lead battle, and we go at the right time because Vermeulen's going to have a go and try his favourite trick around the outside going into turn 1. Elfie Dowie's also a purveyor of that move, and he's going to, well, I don't quite know what he's done, but he's let Vermeulen down the inside, so he blocked off the initial move, but then moves to the left-hand side and almost allows and waves Vermeulen through. So first lap shenanigans haven't ultimately affected Vermeulen's race anyway, because he's backing into the lead. I don't really know what happened there, but for Elfie Dowie, just looked like he got out of the way there. Very odd from the Italian, but he's normally a lot more, he's a lot more aggressive than that usually, but Elfie Dowie seeming happy to settle into 2nd place. Daniel Crossman's not too happy to settle in 3rd. He's going to have another go at Elfie Dowie, one would imagine, to go down the crest into the turn 7 chicane, the right, left, right, that's listed all as one turn. But I can't bother to argue with the track map. He's 2 seconds clear of Johnny Sharp, so Johnny Sharp is not so much of a threat for the podium at this moment in time, but he's comfortable in 4th position. Someone who's uncomfortable, I would suggest, is Richard Gearman. He's only 7/10 clear of Jeffrey DeFast. Chris Gebben going on the defence to Markley Brustulli. Brustulli's got back ahead of Van der Waal, and he wants a spot in the top 8. So Gebben fighting for all his worth, and you might think it's pointless to fight another class, but if he can keep 3 or 4 drivers between him and Serfontaine, Renard Serfontaine is 3rd in silver but 12th on the road, then it's going to prove advantageous, and there's an overall championship to think of as well. Now, Brustulli's Porsche looking a little bit dog-eared, isn't it? There's quite a bit of damage there on the back of the Canadian's Porsche, and it's normally one to let everybody know how that happened, so we'll see how that happened, I'm sure, as the interval proceeds after race number 1. So Vermeulen's already 2 seconds clear of old man Elfie Dowie. So Elfie Dowie really struggling to catch back up. Now Gedman, they're making it very difficult for Brusciulli to get past, and Demian van der Waal, he's on a bit of a recovery drive, having qualified into the 20, so way back, 2.5 seconds off the pace he was, but he's managed to recover and get up into what would be 6th place in the pro class. Brusciulli there getting all over the curves and all sideways there, but able to save himself from attack from van der Waal, even if he can't get Chris Gedman in the car ahead. So Gedman there having a bit of a... Well, he's slower slightly through the chicane, so I wonder if he's a little bit less aggressive. But he certainly is a little bit less aggressive because Brusciulli going all over the grass, and he's now got to think about defence rather than attack. He goes to the inside, and van der Waal's not going to pass there, but he might be able to cut back. Well, it's very difficult against the Porsche with its much more superior traction, rear-wheel drive. Jeffrey de Vast, meanwhile, having a bit of difficulty at the turn 8 hairpin, and he's unable to shake off the attentions and the attractions of Chris Gedman, because now he's 1.8 seconds behind Richard Gearman. But if he can get any closer to... If Gedman can get any closer to de Vast, then if he can get past him and de Vast doesn't have to fight, even if there is the overall championship to go for, then de Vast doesn't really want to get dragged in to the battle behind, because Greg Wood, who's been Mr. Consistency and Mr. Podium visitor throughout the championship season so far, is again second in AM at 11th overall. Now we're going to see if there's another batter. I think Andrew Eden is lining up Renard Serfontaine. He's got past Owen Harris. Harris rather sensibly, in my view, letting him through because he's got 2 seconds off the back of the Lexus, and the Lexus the fastest car by some distance in a straight line. Sparkling Brusciulli again has a little word with the curves in that Porsche, jumping all over them and effectively climbing Mont Blanc as he goes through, as Eden now has a look on Serfontaine going into the chicane, and off into the gravel goes Greg Wood, but through the gravel rather than into the gravel he goes, because he's lost about a second, if that, as he's probably going to have to take a warning for that, but that won't affect the British drivers. To the outside goes Demian van der Waal. Now I wonder, were they both going to run off the track, because Brusciulli looked like he went deep and van der Waal looked like he went deep. We're not going to see it because the camera's going to take a year to catch up. Both drivers survive, and Chris Gedman is given a stay of execution in 8th position with 8 minutes to go. It looks like Alfa Dowie has managed to shake off the attentions of Daniel Crossman. That gap now 1.7 seconds, and it's 1.8 to Johnny Sharp. Johnny Sharp ahead of Josh Clayton, not the dart player Johnny, as I said a little bit earlier on. Doubtless that'll be picked up by you guys, ladies and gentlemen, as well as the drivers when they watch this back, as they all love to. But we've got a few of you watching now, so welcome and enjoy the Formula Racing League spectacle that we're providing. Now van der Waal wants to add to the spectacle, doesn't he? Because sits in the pro at the moment, 10th overall, and he's going to have a word with Barclay Brusciulli. I think more than a word. He's going to weave behind him, see if he can put the Porsche off. Porsche has struggled through the chicane, and he doesn't this time. It does launch off, although he does get a slightly poor exit. Starts to just launch himself offline a little bit there. Porsche not the best on the curves, and the Ferrari now, he's going to have a look at some point, isn't he? He goes slightly to the outside there as Brusciulli defends a little bit more, leaves only the outside for Demian van der Waal. So van der Waal is now going to have to see if he can get a run through turn number 8, as off goes Martin Brusciulli, but not enough for the Dutchman to launch an attack, as I think the Andrew Eden he's not got past the Renard Serfontaine. I was getting him confused with Owen Harris there. Julian Marchal now on the back of Owen Harris. We'll watch as that develops. Now Michael Coppens has got into 5th position in the AM class, but he's got a bit of a queue behind him too. So Jamie Thacker 7/10 for second lead, Colpitts 3/10, Richings 3/10, Fabio Travaglioli is now a second behind, and look at that Ferrari there, damaged at the front end through 2 drivers butting heads going into the first chicane, and that was Jared Vermeulen and Fabio Travaglioli. Travaglioli spun round, so he's done well to recover, as Liam Colpitts now, I think, having a look, isn't he, at Jamie Thacker, certainly the Mustang there, going defensive going into the first corner. Colpitts in the pink BMW staying behind just for the moment, although this is not for position in class. But if Colpitts can get past Thacker, can get past Coppens, then he'll have a run potentially at Alexander Kalugian, even with only 5 minutes to go. We can have a look and see those who were affected earlier on not many of them have made progress, to be honest with you. Ralph Fegan is in the pits. Darren Davidson, who's that off? That, I think, is Alexander Kalugin, who's in strife. Spun at the exit of the chicane. It is Alexander Kalugin who's gone into the wall as well. So that front end looking not in original condition, and the Russian now recovering to what I think is 22nd, I think. So certainly had a bit of a talk with the barriers. No, it's much worse than that. I think it could be even worse. I think it could be 26th, 27th. So disaster for the Russian, launching himself into the barrier there behind Steve Dezes, 28th, and what was a really strong run is now a very unstrong run because he spun at the rather notorious turn 5 chicane, and that's all that he needed to do to take himself out of the running. Travaglioni meanwhile up into 20th behind Lee Colpitts and Jamie Thacker, who are battling and just allowing, not Coppens to get away, but allowing him a moment's peace. So Coppens now still in 5th position, but Coppens now having to battle. He's 7.5 seconds behind Darren Townsend, so he's not going to be going forward to the race. But to the inside goes Lee Colpitts. Colpitts up the inside out of turn number 2, up the inside through turn number 3, up the inside into turn number 4, and through on the exit of turn number 4. Now Travaglioni wants a piece of this, so he's going to go side by side with Jamie Thacker going into the chicane. No, he isn't, because Thacker backs out, and sensible driving all round. And now Travaglioni is Lee Colpitts' problem. Colpitts thought that he had a moment's peace, but a moment's peace is all it was. Josh Clayton, meanwhile, has caught the back of Johnny Sharp. Sharp has dropped a couple of seconds, hasn't he? And so 0.2 of a second we can see for the Ford Mustang, the black and sort of fluorescent yellow green Ford Mustang has caught up to the green trimmed black and grey Ferrari. So the Ferrari now leading him over the line as a couple of tenths ahead of Josh Clayton, who goes through turn number 1 now. The Mustang looking pretty benign, behaving itself, but ultimately not quite as quick as the Ferraris. I think you can see it's a bit of a Ferrari fest, a Ferrari class, isn't it? That top 4. So the interloper in the top 6 is Josh Clayton, who's going to have a look at the back of Johnny Sharp, who goes, why does he know? He just about brings it in. This drive-through penalty for car 334. That, I believe, is Alexander Kalugin. It is Alexander Kalugin. So a miserable race gets worse and worse and worse for the Russian rocket, who has launched himself out of the races. Up down the inside goes Clayton. So a bit of a poor chicane for Johnny Sharp. Now, if he can keep it to the inside, he can. There's contact. Don't think there's anything doing there because Clayton had the line. Sharp turns in, and I think Clayton's going to very fairly let him through. Not sure about that. I think he might have had a leg to stand on, but sporting driving between the two, and Sharp takes 4th position. Again, having briefly lost out with the buffet and banging, and a little bit more goodwill between those two than between Vermeulen and Travaglioni on lap number 1. Now, Vermeulen has a gap of about 7 seconds coming across the line. There he is in the green car number 1 Ferrari. It's more than that, isn't it? It's a hell of a lead, isn't it? He's got 9.5 seconds over Ottman El Fidawi. Mind you, he was a second clear of El Fidawi and Crossman in qualifying and in practice, so perhaps not much of a surprise. Daniel Crossman will be probably a cross man about how he lost the lead to El Fidawi, but I suspect that will be just a bit of Robbins racing there, and the teenager from the United Kingdom is driving another mature race in 3rd position. So going to see if there is another battle. Van der Waal and Bruce Tully going at it hammer and tongs. Van der Waal, I think, has won the battle. Has he won the war? Chris Gebben is ahead. The Porsche of Bruce Tully is fighting Greg Wood. Wood doesn't need to be fighting too hard, but Bruce Tully is starting to get his elbows out. So the Porsche driver, the beleaguered Porsche driver in this race, you have to say, well, Wood's ahead, but is he going to stay there? No, not El Fidawi. Bruce Tully defends, and Wood cuts the corner. So does the Ferrari of Bernard Serfontaine. It ultimately won't matter too much. There's a bit of light flashing going on from the Canadian as up the inside goes Andrew Eden. So that's the position lost in Class 4 for Marco Brusili, and not for very long though, because he buffets Andrew Eden behind, and Andrew Eden again the victim of rear contact. He was the victim of rear contact last time out in Bathurst, and he's been spun around like Kylie Minogue once again as he tries to rejoin the rear end, not gripping on the grass. And it's gone very much like race 2 in Bathurst last time out. Rejoined very well, actually, all things considered, because it's a really tough place to rejoin. But he's dropped to... Well, he's dropped really quite far back, I think. He's 23rd. Is he 20? He might even be further back than that. No, he's just in 23rd position. We go on to the final lap. And what I thought was going to be 16 laps is actually going to be 14. So, shows you where my maths is at. Jared Vermeulen now coming across through the final sector for the last time. The second to last sector for the last time. Gordon Brown goes off and into the gravel. I think that's to make sure that he doesn't have to do another lap where he doesn't necessarily have to. Brown obviously caught up in the lap 1 shenanigans a little bit earlier on. And we'll see now, Travaglioli hasn't got past Lee Colpitts, the Italian. Bit flighty at his best, isn't he? He's certainly one to get his elbows out and go all after the opposition. And Colpitts there runs slightly wide, but so does Travaglioli. Now the Ferrari looking beaten up and bent in. Is going to have a go down the inside, is he? No, not quite. I think he falls out of that in a fashion he didn't quite do on lap number 1. Here is Vermeulen now across the start-finish line to take the first win, to take the win for race number 1, and that is all in the day's work for Jared Vermeulen. Manel Fidawi, there he is. He's going to eventually cross the line to take second place ahead of Daniel Crossman. Daniel Crossman's going to take third to complete a Ferrari Pro podium and a Ferrari overall podium. Josh Clayton's going to take fourth ahead of Johnny Sharp in fifth, with Richard Gimmon in sixth to take a dominant win in the silver class. And well done to Jeffrey DeFast, he's seventh. And the leader of the AM class, Chris Gebben, I think, has got past Damien van der Waal once again in 8th position. He's going to take second in silver, with van der Waal in 5th in the pro category in the Ferrari. Greg Wood takes second, although he may be called into question for the chicane on the last lap. He's second in AM and 10th overall. Renaud Serfontaine is third to complete the silver podium ahead of Marcelin Brustilli and Jordan Marshall. Owen Harris completes the podium for the AM class, but he had to fight for it because Darren Townsend was in 4th, in 15th ahead of Michael Coppens and Lee Colpitts. Travaglioli made it up all the way to 18th after being spun from pole on lap number 1, with Jamie Thacker in 19th ahead of Morgan Grace, another man who had to make a recovery drive. Marcolino's in 21st, ahead of Serafino Gabino and Dale Kelleher up to 23rd, having started in the 30s. Andrew Eden dropped to 24th in the end after being spun by Marcelin Brustilli, I think, through the last couple of laps. Now, Michel van der Waal's 25th, ahead of Luke Richings in 26th. Ben Kruger 27th, ahead of Sam Reeves, the silver AM driver, the silver reserve driver, Miguel Silva in 29th, ahead of Steve Desire in 30th. Terry Tierney caught up in the early lap shenanigans as well. He's 31st all together, ahead of Jack Barnett and Redlock Steve and Darren Mark Davies. So we're going to see if we can get some highlights. Now, we've never done this before, so this could be a complete waste. But we are going to go, actually, yeah, tell you what, let's see if we can get to lap number 1. I don't think I'll be the most popular for this, but we can get to lap number 1. There he is. See if we can speed this up a little bit, because whilst there's going to be lots of cuts and lots of this for a little while, I think we all want to see it, don't we? So let's see if we can see what happens going into turn number 1. See if we can actually change. Let's see if we can change the camera as well. So we're going to go on board with Travaglioli. So Travaglioli loses out, doesn't he, into lap number 1. We'll speed it up again into turn number 1. So you can see on the outside already, Vermeulen's got him around the outside, squeezes him, leaves a car's width, but the Ferrari's definitely got the drop on him going into turn number 2. So Travaglioli plays it actually quite smart. Try to see if he can get a cutback to go through the inside for turn number 3. Not a lot of space left by Jared Vermeulen, it has to be said, but Vermeulen well within his rights to defend hard. Covers the inside for turn number 4, and it's a longer straight for turn number 4, or for the exit of turn number 4. Now they go side by side, and we're going to pause it here. No, we're not. We're going to go backwards is what we're actually going to do. So we'll go backwards here, and we're going to sound a bit like JB Carragher. We'll pause it there. So anybody who's watched Monday Night Football know immediately what I'm on about as we get the helicopter view from these two drivers. Around the outside goes Travaglioli into turn number 5 on lap 1, and he just turns across. I think it's fair to say the two cars are never going to go through there, and Vermeulen was certainly within his rights. You can see Andrew Eden as well as Vaclav Poshmagil being caught up in a melee there. Terry Tierney going off as well, and that's where the further damage was done. Simnett is already off and out, and that is how lap number one's collision happened. So we'll see now how much time have I wasted there. Let's return back to the garage. Well, we've got a bit of time, so certainly a few of the drivers still in their garages now, as we take a moment actually to thank our sponsors. And our sponsor is, as ever, for the SuperSprint Sunday series, is SIMNET, which is an accessories company for any and all sim races to go and have a look at, especially if you've got a sim rig, gloves, boots, anything to do with your sim rig in terms of steering wheel as well. SIMNET is the place to go if you need any details for that, and indeed how to sign up for our various memberships, which I'll go through a little bit later on. Leave a comment on the stream or search up Formula Racing League on every social media except for Facebook, I think, and we'll be able to find us, find a link to our Discord and see what we're all about. And we're going to go through the Patreon service as well. It's £4 a month to become a Patreon member, and for that you get your own number, you get custom photos for Discord made by Chris Gedman, and you get early access and car choice and car change throughout the season. So certainly worth doing. It's £4, so it's half a Big Mac, and it's twice as better for your health. So as we've got now 2.5 minutes to go for the 40-minute race, and slightly longer for that, will Travaglioli and Vermeulen come to blows? We'll go through the grid just quickly for you now, as Fabio Travaglioli starts first ahead of Jaron Vermeulen. Ottman Elphick Dowie is third ahead of Daniel Crossman. Morgan Grace is fifth ahead of Johnny Sharp in sixth, with Gordon Brown seventh, hoping to make a better fist of it than he was able to in the first race, the sprint race, if you like. Richard Gibbon is in eighth, and commanding display in silver it was from him. Josh Clayton is ninth ahead of Greg Wood. Greg Wood second after issues on lap number one in the AM class. Jeffrey DeVos, an impressive winner in the AM class, starts 11th ahead of Michael Brusciulli and Andrew Eden. Steve Desert completes row number 7 in the pro class, with Michel van der Waal and Vaclav Pospisil on row 8. Alexander Kalugin and Renat Serfontaine are on row 9. They're 17th and 18th, with Owen Harris third in the AM class in the race and on the grid in 19th ahead of Chris Gedman. In 20th, he got up 12 places on the opening lap last time out. Terry Tierney's in 21st ahead of Jordan Marshall in 22nd. Jeremy Thacker's 23rd ahead of Demian van der Waal, who gained a lot of places as well, didn't he, the Dutchman, from 24th. Now, Luke Richings is 25th ahead of Michael Coppens in 26th, row 14. 27th is Marco Lino ahead of Lee Colpitts, with Greaves and Kelleher on row number 15. Ben Kruger is in 31st ahead of Mikael Silva, with Jack Barnett, Darren Mark Davies in 33rd and 34th. Serafino Gabino is in 35th ahead of Dreadlock Steve, with Paul Trotman and Ryan Fegan ahead of Darren Townsend. I wonder if Townsend disconnected, but he certainly put himself a lot further back than he should have been, because he wasn't 39th on the grid, as we'll take just a couple of second break to get me watered and to give you a little bit of peace and quiet.
30 seconds. Seconds. 10 seconds. 10
And the drivers then go away for their formation sprint, and Travaglioli getting very close to Vermeulen. Those two coming to blows to turn number 5 on lap 1 last time out. Will they be able to get through safely, or will there be further controversy and further collisions going into turn number 5? We're going across the line now, waiting, and we're waiting for green, and we have found green, and it's a good start for Josh, for Jaron Vermeulen, but Travaglioli gets a better start than he did in race number 1 and leads through turn number 1, so should be a bit of a safer passage for the Italian this time by going into turn 2 Vermeulen does think about a move going into turn number 2, but thinks better of it as they go through turn number 3 now in acceleration zone. Can the South African put a bit more pressure on Travaglioni going through turn 4? He can't, and they are line astern going through the first sector. So I think the Italian might just be a bit safer this time. But a couple of drivers have gone off as well, as I think the 2 pit lane starters, Desert and Van der Waal, have left the pit lane as well. And they are all single file as Vermeulen actually hits the curb far too hard. Might find himself under attack from Daniel Crossman, third last time out. Crossman can't quite land a blow going into turn number 7 this time by, but they're all rather safely through the chicane. So no casualties this time, although I think there's contact between Sharp and Brown. It's definitely Gordon Brown who's run into the side of, I think, Josh Clayton. So Clayton now in 8, has to drop back. Does he? No, he doesn't, although he has gone side by side. I think he has let Gordon Brown through, actually, but he's going to have another problem because Greg Wood, who has made a better start than he did last time out, has gone up into 9th place. He's fighting Josh Clayton. We're waiting for the cameras to catch themselves up, but I think the Aston Martin has fallen in behind. He's going to have a look down the inside into the final chicane on Clayton. Thinks better of it because he's got a gap of 1 car between himself and Jeffrey DeFast. DeFast led and won last time out, but he is second this time by the Belgian. Not quite making the same start as he did last time. Richard Gearman has dropped a couple of positions to 10th, so the Ferrari not quite able to capitalise as he did previously. Bruce Tully's dropped to 13th behind Andrew Reid, who's side by side with Jeffrey DeFast in the Lexus. DeFast and the McLaren ahead, but not able to pass around the outside into turn number 1. So there's who's dropped back. That's Dale Kelleher who has dropped back, isn't he? He's dropped just about crossing the line at this moment in time. He's 7 seconds off the pace, but with a bent in front end. So I think the Mancunian has come to grief. It's been a bit of a stop-start to his season with the injury to his finger as he's gone off the track, and I think into retirement as Kelleher looking at badly beating up Ferrari. But Vermeulen versus Travaglioni, the sequel. The sequel's never usually as good as the original, but I think the difficult second album might be a hit here, as we've got 37 minutes of this, as Gavin Vermeulen now searching, sizing up his prey, going into the final corner now. Has a look, does he? He's 0.3 of a second behind, but I don't think he's going to be able to launch an attack here as Travaglioni goes through the final chicane now to try and see if he can stretch his legs. It's going to be difficult because Vermeulen was quite obviously the quicker of the 2 in practice. He lost out to pole position and was able to obviously force his way through. We'll see what she would say about that a little bit later on, but he was able to force his way through by hook or by crook on lap number 1 with the Italian coming to grief. But Travaglioni has made a better fist of it this time around. Now we can see the battle for 5th. Another man who's made it slightly better, and made a slightly better fist of it this time around, is Morgan Grace. Morgan Grace, who was another cover cropper on lap number 1 last time out. He ended up, I think, way back in the 20s by race, and he's 5th, the Welshman, so he's managed to avoid trouble in Belgium so far. Gordon Brown, meanwhile, still has the attentions of Josh Clayton. Clayton launching himself over the curb in that Mustang. That 2-ton American meat wagon is currently stalking the Sky branded Ferrari over the curves into the chicane. Not the favourite thing of the Mustang 2 is to change direction quickly, one after another, and Wood & Brown is able to get away just a little bit. Now, Greg Wood has a bit of a lead, does he? He's got 2 seconds over Jeffrey DeFast, which is his main competition. Richard Gearman in second as well, having an excellent start to the season, but certainly having an excellent round this time around in the silver class. He's won last time out. He's second overall as well, second in the class as well. He's got Rinard Serfontein 4 cars behind him, so he's got a bit of license to be careful and back it off a bit should he wish to. But I go back to the lead battle because Vermeulen is 1/10 of a second behind Travaglioni, and it feels like he's just trying to force the Italian into a mistake every which way he can. It's almost when you've got a car that's the same as the driver in front of you and it becomes about driver, it's all about seeing if you can buzz around and be an annoyance, because I guarantee you from experience, if you're an annoyance behind somebody, then they start thinking about what you're doing rather than what they're doing. And that is certainly what the South African is trying to achieve now, as he very nearly succeeds. Travaglioli getting it all run on the exit of the chicane. And now down the inside goes Vermeulen. Is he going to make a move down the inside into the other chicane? No, not quite. Travaglioli has it covered just about, as they both cut as much as possible through the chicane there, but nothing doing. Running slightly out was Jared Vermeulen, but he's not going to be able to make the move on this lap, because going into the hairpin, it's not really much of a braking zone in GT3 cars, and it's going to prove to be the case here. One of the more narrow tracks as well, so you really got to work hard for your overtake here, and South Africa pulls out the slipstream to get a look at the first, well, the next braking zone. I think that's what he's doing here. A couple of cars who have been in trouble and are now in the pits, car 666 and car 27. So 666 is Dreadlock Steve, so somebody who's doing rather well in the AM class has come to grief. Darren Martin Davies is another one to have hit problems, and Terry Tierney, it was such a strong debut to the championship, but he's starting to come a cropper at Zolder, which many men have done previously. So Terry Tierney down in 35th. He's still got some racing to do, he's still got some work to do, but it's going to be likely to be his drop score at this moment in time. 0.3 of a second between these two, Travaglioli and Vermeulen. Vermeulen now going down the straight to see if he can eke out a little bit, see if he can get a little bit further, as Vermeulen there goes quite smoothly through the chicane. Travaglioli going smoothly through the chicane as well, although with a little bit more bumpage from the Ferrari in the lead. Anyway, there's obviously two Ferraris, there's 7 Ferraris in the top 7. It's a bit of a Ferrari fest here, and the two imposters in the top 10 anyway are Josh Clayton and Greg Wood in the Mustang and the Aston Martin. So if you've got a Ferrari, you should be doing pretty well. Richard Gearman in 10th position, the other Ferrari, the 8th in the top 10. Already nearly a quarter of the way through the race, and it's setting itself up rather nicely. These two are obviously about half a second apart. It's about as big as the gap has been for the last 3 or 4 laps, as Vermeulen tries to work his way past Fabio Travaglioli. Fabio Travaglioli, who hasn't converted pole position in any of his races so far, with missing out at Bathurst in race number 1, going off and crashing on the mountain in race number 2, and obviously coming together with Vermeulen in the first race this time around. Vermeulen has a look, does he? No, not quite. I thought he might have to force the Italian into defence mode. He doesn't, but he does get a good run coming out of the fourth bend, fourth apex, skips to the inside now. He's not going to make it through there, but he might be able to put the Italian off. Doesn't, because Vermeulen who goes off, it's Vermeulen who cuts the corner. That might be a warning, but it is still all go. He's dropped about half a second to the Italian. We'll come back to that battle a little bit later on, because Backlash Bosmagil is 0.2 of a second behind Renault Serfontaine, and he's looking down the inside because Serfontaine is in a bit of a train himself. Jeffrey DeFast, who's been deposed from 11th by Andrew Eden, the Lexus driver in the pro category, has got past DeFast, who's now got a rather cross Marklin Brush-Tully behind. Brush-Tully obviously being beaten up and then re-beating up Andrew Eden in the race just gone. We'll certainly see a little bit more from the stewards about that. Brush-Tully now goes to the outside, tries to force DeFast on the defensive. He does go around the outside, goes onto the marbles though, tries to cut back in the Porsche. Can't cut back too much because Serfontaine is already there. So Porsche gets a good run going into a final corner. DeFast goes to the inside but thinks he's got it covered as Brush-Tully launches a late one down the inside, but isn't close enough. I think that was more of a look rather than a stare down the inside now, as the battle for what is 12th now rages on. DeFast dropping back, as you would expect from Andrew Eden in the Lexus, ahead in 11th and in, I think, 8th overall. Yes, he is 8th in the pro class, so Eden will look to build on the pace, if not the result, from race number 1, with Bosmagil holding up Chris Gedman, is he? Well, he's certainly in and around Chris Gedman, who is in 16th and has gone forwards once again. He's 4th in the silver class, so Mr. Consistency in the silver class has certainly been able to put a run together so far throughout the Zolder to, well, the Zolder event, I was about to say Zolder weekend, it's not that, is it? It's just a Sunday. But second overall, well, second last time out in the silver class, and fourth this time by building on what was a solid run at Bathurst last time out. Chris Bento, he's ahead of Alexander Kalugin, who had the issues with the curve, didn't he? Launched himself at the wall going through the chicane. As down the outside goes Bush Tully again on fast, but again it doesn't work as Kalugin launched himself at the curve a little bit earlier on, didn't he? And took himself out of what was a promising silver position. He's now, as Chris Gepman does go defensive there, but I think he's just trying to break the tone as Lugin follows in behind 4 tenths of a second back. McLaren not the best in the race as well, so that should pay dividends for the Porsche, which has got excellent traction, hasn't it, the Porsche? So really burp out of the corner and down the straight, and these straights aren't really long enough to then recapture the Porsche. So the Colpit's in 18th. There's a bit of a return to form for him. He's 6th in class, and the title contender last time out hasn't had it all his own way in the silver class so far, but he's certainly given a good account of himself in this race, having had, again, a pretty difficult race number one. He finished quite well, but the method again there was not the easiest for the Brits, as Fabio Travaglioli now leads Vermeulen once again by 3 tenths of a second, so it's devilishly close between these two. We will keep coming back to this periodically, which won't please everybody, but will please some. As Daniel Crossman has dropped back. It's dropped back to 6th position. Was there any contact there? We don't know. What we do know is that Morgan Grace has got past both him and Omat El Fidawi into 3rd position. So the Welshman marking a return to form there by getting himself up into the podium position. He's now got El Fidawi behind him in 4th, and in 5th is Johnny Sharp. So I wonder if there was contact there that sent Crossman to 6th position, but he's just ahead of Gordon Brown, just ahead of Josh Clayton. Clayton hasn't cleared Gordon Brown since their lap 1 bumper car move, in which Clayton led him back through, which was very fair and very decent of him. But I think now that Sharp is going to come under a bit of pressure as well, isn't he? Because 4 tenths of a second ahead of Crossman. He ran slightly wide through turn number 2, didn't he? And he's got to keep himself together through turn 4. It's going to be okay there for the Ferrari driver, you would expect, because the chicane there, you really have to be certain of your move before you make that move there. As the Ferrari in 3rd, that's Morgan Grace, does make a bit of a mess, actually, doesn't he, of the chicane. And round the outside goes Omat El Fidawi. Now they're going to go side by side and make the Ferrari on the inside favourite, but El Fidawi breaks later, is ahead by turn number 2 and gets the move done. So Grace very fair there, but El Fidawi very brave, goes around the outside into the 3 apex chicane, the 3-tiered chicane, if you will, and the Italian is up into 3rd position. The Italian getting the job done there on the Welshman. Daniel Crossman is another man to be fighting, who's worked for the ACC cameras to eventually catch themselves up. He was fighting, I think, with Johnny Sharp, as Sharp has dropped back to 6th. The Crossman's already got Sharp, but he is now battling with Gordon Brown. Brown, he might be a silver driver, but he's fighting with the pros. Proving a bit of a point, isn't he, the Scotsman in the Sky branded Ferrari, as Sharp goes to the inside. So the top 7 are all Ferraris. Bit boring, isn't it, that? You know, we need a little bit more variety. So come on, Clayton, come on, Wood, get yourselves into the heart of the action and see if we can break the Ferrari monopoly. I think we can. So as wide, as soon as I said that, Greg Wood misses the 2nd corner, the 2nd apex at turn number 2, and the AM driver, well, the AM leader, remembers that he's got a pretty big gap over Jeffrey DeFast, who's been shuffled backwards, isn't he? So that's DeFast there, as Wood, I think, has got about a 6 or 7 second gap on DeFast, and that's all he really cares about. So I say boring, obviously, in the lightest sense of the word there. It's all earned being in the lead, and certainly the Ferrari, whilst it might be the strongest car around here, you've got to drive it as quickly as it will go. Now, Jared Vermeulen is driving his Ferrari, I don't think as quickly as it will go, because I think it will go a bit quicker if he can get a run on Travaglioli. Travaglioli in the lead, car number 41, and he's 2 tenths ahead, but he's doing a lot of defending, and it's just about whether Vermeulen can make the move and force the mistake, which is what it appears to be. Travaglioli fighting away, and proving a bit of a nuisance to the South African. Normally it's serene progress for the South African driver, but not so in race number 2. He's going slightly wide coming out turn number 2, sets up the run through turn number 3, but is a little bit wide there because one mistake leads to another through turns 2 and 3. They're coming up on lap traffic as well. That's Ryan Fegan, who pulls over to the left-hand side. Well done to the Irishman. Gets out of the way and allows the 2 leaders through. That's sensible driving there from the AMG driver, who's launching himself over the curb. Goes Travaglioli, but he's able to keep the lead. He's got 0.4 of a second in his pocket over Newland, but I suspect that this one will continue to run and run and run as we approach the halfway mark. So let's see if there's a further battle. There is. And just for third position in the AM class, that's Jamie Thacker, and it's Owen Harris. Thacker in the Craig Lowndes themed livery. Well, I'm calling it that, even if he hasn't yet officially, as behind the Sky-branded McLaren of Owen Harris, the 3rd, 4th, 20th and 21st, 3rd and 4th in the AM category. As we saw, Demian van der Waal not able to make the progress that he's made in the first race. He's down in 18th behind the Colpitts and Chris Getman. Chris Getman holding a bit of a train up in 3rd in class. He's got Renard Serfontein ahead, but I think he's looking backwards because the Colpitts in 4th in class, in 5th in class, sorry, in the BMW car number 94 is putting all sorts of pressure on him, as is Van der Waal, as is Kalugin. But we're looking at the battle here for 3rd in the AM class, and it's one of those that really could go either way. As Dale Kelleher has said, that there are a couple of issues with the contact on lap number 1, as well as Dreadlock Steve, as his qualifying hadn't gone according to plan. So we'll hopefully hear a little bit more from the drivers as we find out as the race progresses. Those drivers who haven't been able to complete the lap. Darren Davies is another one of those who's 2 laps down. Dreadlock Steve has had to repair his car and is now 3 laps down, but is still going. So well done, kudos to them, continuing to get going on that, but can be very difficult indeed. So see if we can find another battle. I think it's going to be Colpitts in the BMW trying to line up the Porsche. Now the Porsche's got excellent traction, hasn't it? But not that much in terms of straight line speed going into the chicane. Now we go, and it's about trying to see if you can put the other driver off. Gebben gets the Porsche through the chicane expertly, a man of his experience, not going to be flustered by cars behind, and certainly the rather striking pink BMW of Lee Colpitts, who's another man with plenty of experience to his name. See if he can force a mistake from Chris Getman ahead. He's got no, he hasn't. He's got Van der Waal behind him. Obviously, Van der Waal having hamstrung himself with his qualifying a little bit earlier on, and he goes around the outside as Demian van der Waal, and Colpitts gives him room, but does not give him safe passage through, and the Ferrari is forced to concede. I think Colpitts might be better off actually letting the Ferrari go and see if he can cause chaos up ahead, because Van der Waal on his day, and certainly he's had plenty of those days so far, is top 3 pace-wise in Pro. So if Colpitts does let him go without ceding position to Alexander Kalugin, could actually prove to be beneficial for the Englishman. As he goes through turn number 1, Chris Getman does go slightly wide through turn number 1. This is the breaking point. Now the Porsche is going to go onto the defensive into turn number 2. Colpitts goes around the outside, tries to set it up a little bit through turn 2 and turn 3, but the Porsche is going to hold on as Colpitts has a look. Does he down the inside into turn 4? No, he doesn't. The 3rd right-hander in a row is held off by Chris Getman, and Getman's able to get away just for the moment. As down the inside goes Van der Waal, I think Colpitts, I'm not going to say he's let him through, but he certainly is. Van der Waal goes well across the chicane. He'll have to give that place back. I suspect he'll lose a couple more, because Van der Waal, there was contact, but I'd be amazed if he doesn't think to let him through, because he's quite clearly cut the corner, and he's got Chris Getman now behind, and he's done that in front of one of the chief stewards. So not a good idea for Van der Waal to not let him go. He's trying to, I expect, try and pick his spot. He pulls over to the right-hand side. He does, and he's going side by side. What is he doing there? Because he's just launched himself into the corner and has held up Getman once more. So I don't know whether he is trying to let him through, but if he is, he's making a pretty awful job of it. As finally, Getman goes through, and Colpitts is going to go around the outside going into the final chicane. No, he isn't, because Van der Waal gets it through ahead of the BMW. But yeah, well, all's well that ends well. But I don't think Van der Waal will look back on that with ultimate pride, because nearly causing an accident with Chris Gepman and Lee Colpitts after taking evasive action going into the chicane. So we did well to miss him there. But I feel that could have been cleared. And now Van der Waal's going to start attacking Chris Gepman, and he goes down the inside through turn number 3. No, he isn't, but he is going to see if he can set up the Porsche going out of turn number 4 and into the chicane. Now Gepman might he pull over? Might he let Van der Waal through? I'm not so sure he is. Van der Waal's weaving away behind him, trying to see if he can put the Scotsman off. He'll have to get up earlier than that to catch him out, as Gepman makes a bit of a mess of the chicane, and Van der Waal gets his way through. I don't know whether there was any contact, but Lee Colpitts is another man trying to get his way through in the BMW. We're going to go to the inside into the chicane. Now Gepman fights around the outside. He's got to fight more, but Colpitts squeezes through. Bit more contact from Gepman. The back end comes out on the BMW. I think Gepman might have been hit by Kalugin, but all's well again that ends well. I mean, Harris is getting involved as well. Going down the inside, is he? No, not quite in the McLaren. He's going to defend rather than attack, as Greaves, well, in the silver class BMW, the newcomer for this round anyway, is also fighting away. Alexander Kalugin now having a go at Chris Gepman, and the Scotsman having to get a little regain control and steady the ship a little bit. What was fourth, is now fifth in the silver class, as Gepman drops behind Lee Colpitts, who snuck through the chicane. Kalugin not able to do likewise, as Greaves now has a look at Thacker. Thacker, remember, is going for third place in the AM class, as Owen Harris currently has that particular title to hopefully, for his sake, complete a double podium finish, which would be a return to form for the driver who's had not much luck really throughout, as we're going to see the lead battle now. Starting to come up to a couple of lapped cars. I think car 666 is Terry Tierney ahead. It is, no, it isn't. It's Dreadlock Steve, as Terry Tierney appears to have retired. Has he? No, or no? I'll right on him. 139. The Aston Martin. We do need to get the eyes tested. It's not been the finest moment there, has it? Terry Tierney in 29th, ahead of Jordan Marshall. So Marshall, another or two have come to grief somewhere else, as the Ferrari of Vermeulen is once again trying to see if he can force a mistake out of Travaglioli, who stood up to the test rather better than he did in race 1, lap 1. So Travaglioli looking at his first win of the season at the 4th time of asking from pole position. The Italian is starting to look the part, isn't he? Vermeulen not able to get through at this moment in time. They go through the chicane, line astern, nose to tail, and it's going to be again firing the way out of turn number 8. Down the hairpin, it turns into the wall, goes the lapped car. Oh my goodness me, that has taken both lead drivers out. The Aston Martin, the lead car, Dreadlock Steve, has taken both lead drivers out. Travaglioli has lost the lead and lost a lot of performance. I think Vermeulen might be able to recover it, but that is disaster for the Italian. And when he was looking just set, I was just saying he was looking the part in terms of the lead. Well, into the wall he goes as the Aston Martin drops it. We'll have to see if he held the brakes, but the back end looking ruined on Travaglioli's Ferrari. Now we'll see whether Vermeulen has got damage, but certainly these two are going to be hampered. I think they're well clear of Omas El-Fidawi. El-Fidawi hasn't yet gone through the final chicane, and Dreadlock Steve might have a bit of explaining to do to the lead two drivers. It looked like he just lost it on the run into the hairpin, hit the wall once, and then rebounded across the track. And Dreadlock Steve, unfortunately, causing the demise of Fabio Travaglioli, who is in the pits and surely into retirement. Plenty of damage there. He has retired from the race. Travaglioli left the server, which leaves South African Jared Vermeulen to take the win, you would expect, with 15 minutes to go. Although it's not a foregone conclusion, is it? Because that damage on the Ferrari is going to be wrecking his performance. But has he got enough time? Well, he's got 15 seconds on El-Fidawi, so El-Fidawi needs to catch him at a minute per lap. El-Fidawi has just got past Cecily Morgan-Grace, who goes through the stones on the outside, through the gravel on the outside. I think that was Daniel Crossman assisted, and Crossman indeed does not take the position. Meanwhile, Johnny Sharp has got Josh Clayton behind. It's a bit of a rerun from earlier on in the evening, as Sharp goes across the chicane and Clayton now starting to take time out of the Ferrari. Ford Mustang started to come good once again in the latter half of the race. We'll see if there's anything in the YouTube comments, as there was from Dreadlock Steve a little bit earlier on, but I'm not so sure there'll be anything at the moment. I think it might just be a few sorries and what on earth happened there. Thank you very much. But well, let's see now what the gap is between Alpha Dowie and Formula. Formula crossed the line a little while ago. It was 15.1 in sector 1. We'll see what the damage is now. 15.3. So it looks like he's going to survive if he can just keep the thing on the road, because it's not losing time. Alpha Dowie goes wide, doesn't he? Going through turn number 1, and that's going to have Morgan Grace all over him again. Morgan Grace for so long was third, wasn't he? But Alpha Dowie running slightly wide there. He's going to see if he can invite the Welshman. Well, I say he was running third, he is running third, but that's largely due to the demise of Fabio Travaglioni. But Alpha Dowie now a little bit more vulnerable, isn't he, in second position. I think he's going to be able to get away with it if he doesn't make any further mistakes. Now, Marklin Bristolli not fighting for class points, but fighting for overall points, with a rather stubborn Greg Wood, who's kept himself out of trouble once again, the Aston Martin driver, and is looking good for another class victory with what would be a rather dominant start to the AM Championship. Greg Wood in 8th, ahead of Marklin Bristolli in 9th. Gordon Brown has gone missing. What on earth has happened to the Flying Scotsman? Because Gordon Brown was leading, and Richard Gearman has now been given free passage, hasn't he, to go and take the win. Gordon Brown is 28th. Let's have a look at the Sky branded Ferrari. It all looks fairly new, so I don't know whether he's gone into the wall. Well, the front back end doesn't look too bad. What about the front? No, I don't know, to be honest with you. I can't see any damages through the chicane. In a rather unorthodox way goes Luke Richings in 23rd. He's battling Desire and Gabino. Desare's been a bit of a disaster for Steve Desire, isn't he? 24th. I think had a pretty wretched opening race as well. So we'll find out from Gordon Brown, I'm sure, what happened there. But shaking it up a bit, because Gearman leads. Serfontaine is in second in silver, and Chris Gebman is now fighting. Well, he's not fighting. He's into the wall again. Goes the Aston Martin. I think that was Steve Desire in the Ferrari as well. Terry Tierney's in the wall. There's a McLaren in strife. Alexander Kalugin has also hit the wall as well. Will hit other cars, and that is disaster for Terry Tierney. Oh, it has the rejoin from car 44. Vian Kruger, not good at all. Into Michel van der Waal, and we've got chaos once again in Belgium. Michel van der Waal, the victim of a rather poor rejoin, it has to be said, from Vian Kruger, who will not be proud of that. There's Ryan Fegan, who's got damage as well in the Mercedes, the AM class. Gordon Brown now up into 24, sorry, and a bit more competitive in the silver class than he once was. So into the pits goes Alexander Kalugin. I think Terry Tierney is also going to be recovering his way back to the pits, as Michael Coppens is another man to get through, actually, isn't he? So we're just trying to see exactly who's in and out. Kalugin's into the pits. Van der Waal is recovering. Vian Kruger, unsurprisingly, has only just been able to drag that McLaren back to the pits, and he won't be terribly pleased. That rejoin was caught on stream. Ryan Fegan is another man to go into the pits as well. That's obviously with the damage sustained to that Mercedes. Darren Mark Davies is going through now. So Fegan is in 35th, drops to 35th. Kalugin's race, well, it's been a pretty awful weekend, an awful event for Alexander Kalugin. Who it's not been awful for is Daniel Crossman, because he's currently looking at 2 podiums in a row. Now, with Otman El Fidawi ahead by 1.5 seconds, I don't think he'll catch him unless El Fidawi has a problem. Given that El Fidawi is not able to make an impression on Tribune, that's possible, but Crossman has got a rather bigger issue behind him, and that is Morgan Grace. Grace was in 4th position. Started 5th, wasn't he? He's in 4th at the moment. Started 5th. Had a wretched race number 1, didn't he? Morgan Grace. But in race number 2, it's gone rather better. So he's pressuring the young Englishman ahead. You know, when that's a Welshman, you know it's an Englishman you're chasing. It's like a red rag to a bull, isn't it? Now, Morgan Grace going into the scene of the carnage at turn number 8, a little bit earlier on. But no such issues there for everybody. Dreadlock Steve remains in the pit. You can see the yellow 666 car from the earlier collisions, as Dreadlock Steve getting in the way of the lead drivers, to great effect for Jared Vermeulen in the end, and to rather dreadful effect for the Italian Fabio Travaglioni. Now, coming out the final corner, Grace is going to have a run. Is he down the inside into turn number 1? He is. He moves late. Down the inside is the late decisive move. Crossman leaves him room, but the Welshman not able to make it through. Fair drive from the pair of them, as Grace did have a run on the inside, but Crossman not making it easy, driving with maturity beyond his years, as I say, seem to say every weekend, to be fair to him. So excellent stuff from the young Brit, who's also a commentator on our Tuesday night series, the Tier 2. You can see that on his Twitch stream as the effervescent Italian Andrea Mattavelli commentates on the Tier 1 on Tuesday night. I'll go through that in just a couple of moments and take you through all the races that we do and all the weekends that we do on ACC on console in just a moment once the race settles down. In fact, I could do that now as Jaron from Mullen goes past the lapped car. I think that might have been the McLaren of Michel van der Waal. So I mentioned obviously commentating from Mattavelli, Andrea Mattavelli and Daniel Crossman. Crossman commentates on Tier 2 in the Taco Tuesday night series. So that is a collection of different races, usually an hour long, a couple of 90-minute races, of which this week is a 90-minute race around Zolder. So slightly open strategy there, as Crossman is behind Morgan Grace now, isn't he? So Grace has been able to force his way through, away from cameras, as is so often the case. That's where he gets stage fright, doesn't he? But as the Aston Martin pulls on out of the way. So on Tuesday nights, you have the Taco Tuesday, which is split into 2 tiers, of which there are 2 classes in that. So Pro and Silver, Pro and Silver in tier number 1, which is streamed by the magnificent Andrea Mattavelli on our YouTube channel, and on his very own Twitch channel, Daniel Crossman streams the tier 2 on Taco Tuesday, which is Pro-Am and the Am classes. He goes to the outside now, see if he can make a rather pro move around the outside of Morgan Grace. They go side by side through the chicane, and much like the Ferraris earlier on in race number 1, there's contact, but they seem to survive. I don't know whether they'll give it up, but here comes Johnny Sharp and here comes Josh Clayton now. Clayton seeing if he can get his Mustang in the mix, and well, he's heard the call, hasn't he, to get into the top 5, and Josh Clayton does so. He mugs Johnny Sharp there, as Crossman now tries to see if he can fight Morgan Grace. Morgan Grace just about holding on as they went side by side and door to door through the chicane as Crossman goes down the inside. Does he make contact? No, he doesn't. It looked for all the world as if he might, but just manages to keep himself out of the back of the Ferrari. The Ferrari of Morgan Grace now trying to see if he can get away and make good his escape, because Josh Clayton trying to see if he can get past the Ferrari ahead of Daniel Crossman, and Clayton unable to do so. But he's certainly in the top 5, so he's heard me comment earlier about getting more cars into the top 5, and he's delivered. So thank you, Josh. You've done your bit, and you've obviously been listening to me. That's what I'm going to take from this, as Sharp now feels a bit mugged, doesn't he, going back to 5th place. Deja vu for the Englishman in the Ferrari, as he was beaten to the punch a little bit earlier on by Josh Clayton, and he tries another run through turn number 3 and turn number 4, but it's not going to be to any avail, certainly not this time. We'll just go back to the other rounds that we do as well on Thursday nights as well. You can catch the M2 BMW class or single class race from 8:30 as well. Not streamed, but if you can race, do, because it's incredible fun, as the low downforce, low grip, low speed makes for a lot closer racing. So it's something that we've been trying to push for a little while, the single class weight, and I'm pleased to say that it has come to the Formula Racing League scene once again, as leading the race is Jaron from Mullen, 18 seconds clear now, isn't he, from Omat Elfidal. We'll catch a look at him. There is the Ferrari kitting what it looks like the green Ferrari there, going about his business after the earlier scare which took out his rival Fabio Travaglioni. So Daniel Crossman now going into 4th position, trying to see if he can catch up to Morgan Grace and see if he can disturb the Welshman enough, see if he can force a pass for 3rd. Josh Clayton, meanwhile, in 5th, has battles behind him, battles ahead, isn't he? Because Johnny Sharp is not coming away for 5th position, whereas the Mustang must feel that if the two in front get together, he could start to make a move there. So certainly a lot on Josh Clayton's plate. The man from Leicestershire in the English Midlands is getting his way through turn number 4, having to maybe fight off the affections of Johnny Sharp, has got a little bit of a swap on, didn't he? Coming out turn number 4, but all under control going into turn 5. As Grace again has a few problems, isn't he, going through the chicane. He starts to get all over the curve as Crossman goes to the inside through the little kink, but to the outside of the chicane, and the Welshman survives in 3rd position. Just when you think the battle might just die down, or certainly ease up a little bit, there's another sting, isn't there? Another sting in the tail. I think we're going to have now 3 laps to go as Newton crosses the line with 4.5. As there is contact going into turn number 8 between Crossman and Grace. Crossman, I think, got into the back of Grace, and Grace has been pushed back, hasn't he, Morgan Grace? He's been pushed back to 5th at least, because Clayton's going to get past, and I think Sharp might have a run around the outside. He doesn't, because Grace is able to block off, but there was definitely contact there. Certainly you could see Grace's back end jump up, although if I'm doing Crossman a disservice, I do apologise, but you can see certainly that Grace's back end lost a bit of control there. Crossman's able to get through, and well, the Ferrari doesn't look too damaged. I may have that wrong, but you can certainly see the back end of the Ferrari launch and lose a bit of control there, and the Welshman, who was in 3rd position, drops to 5th position, and now we've got a Ford in the top 4, so the Ferrari hold on the top 6. It's still pretty strong, but Josh Clayton up into 4th position, doing a sterling job in the non-Ferrari class. Certainly going to win that class with ease, isn't he? As the man from the English Midlands now might just have his sights set on 3rd position. The Ferrari not looking great through the chicane there, is he? As the Ford, whilst it launches over the curbs, doesn't seem to lose as much momentum, does he? Now on the brakes into the 3 apex, the 3 pointed turn number 7, according to the circuit map anyway, as they go back out and onto the back of the circuit now, as the back end of that Mustang looks a little bit ragged, doesn't it? But that just shows that Josh Clayton is really giving it everything. Jaffrey Mulan's crossed the line once again with 3 minutes to go, so we might have an extra lap, yeah, unless he takes pity on the rest of the field and slows up. He's certainly got the gap to do it, because it's 18 seconds, or it was, between himself and Alpha Dowie. Alpha Dowie's now only going to be crossing the line now as further drivers are lapped by him. It's 21 seconds, so Alpha Dowie very much settling for 2nd position. We'll see if there's another battle. I think there is between Backlash Boschmachil in 10th and Greg Wood in 9th. Now Marklin Bristolli has got past Greg Wood relatively recently. Wood now in 9th position, driving a very sensible race, as he tends to do, with Boschmachil in 10th. Gearman, who's leading the silver class, in 11th, ahead of Renard Serfontein. Serfontein now 6 seconds back. That's insurmountable, you would think, for the South African, with Serfontein now thinking more about consolidation. Lee Colpitts, meanwhile, looks like he's going to retain or take 3rd position. He's going to take it quite comfortably, doesn't he, with what looks to be a lap and a half to go. So 2 laps to go for Colpitts. He's got 8 seconds, 9 seconds on Chris Gebman, who's built for comfort. This race is not speed, but he's going to be in 4th position. The head admin and the, I don't know whether it's league founder or certainly one of the head honchos, but doing a sterling job once again of getting that car to the end in relatively decent nick. He's got Marco Lino a couple of seconds back, whilst the battle for the AM podium, the final AM podium spot, is Darren Townsend and Owen Harris. Now, Jamie Thacker in 5th position, having a bit of a fight too. So Gordon Brown has got up into, he's got past Owen Harris. Harris has gone off and wide, and that front end looking a bit beaten up, as Alexander Kalugin once again is in the wall at that chicane. So the Russian once again not having it all his own way, and the bumps and the gruesome nature of that chicane, unfortunately for him, catching him out once again. Jamie Thacker has dropped back, so obviously with Harris having hip problems a little bit earlier on, Thacker's dropped back and not able to fight Townsend for the AM podium. Now we go to Jared Vermeulen, because he is lapping drivers like Alexander Kalugin. Now, is he going to slow up? I would suspect he probably will, because I suspect, well, he's got 25 seconds to go. He's not got much time to find, and I think he's going to end up putting the, well, he's hopefully puts it for Kalugin's sake, putting him out of his misery, because it's not been a fun race, has it, for the Russian having a couple of times put into the wall. So through the final chicane we go to possibly see Jared Vermeulen win the second race and win a rather chaotic race number 2. In fact, it is going to be just on the line. He's finished the race in the maximum possible time, so 40 minutes on the dot. Jared Vermeulen takes rather comfortable, in the end, race victory in the pro class. Oppenel for Dowie is going to come across the line at long last in second position. So Alfa Dowie, the Italian, weaving across the line, and he takes second, 21 seconds back, with Daniel Crossman looking like he's going to hold on for third place. He does, ahead of Josh Clayton in fourth. The Ford Mustang driver could be very pleased with that performance. Morgan Race is fifth, ahead of Johnny Sharp in sixth, and Andrew Eden in seventh, just ahead of Michael Bush-Tully. We're going to welcome the AM winner, that's Greg Wood. He's had another solid weekend in the Aston Martin. He takes ninth, ahead of Akbar Poshbashil in 10th. Richard Gearman takes 11th, and with that, the win in the silver class, well ahead of Rinart Serfontaine. So second and first for 2 wins, actually, isn't it, for Richard Gearman in the silver class. Rinart Serfontaine takes second in silver and 12th overall, ahead of Jeffrey DeFast in 13th. The AM second place, Damien van der Waal spinning his way round turn number 1. Lee Colpitts, meanwhile, 15th, takes the silver podium. A return to form for the Englishman, who's not had everything his own way. Chris Gedman takes 16th and 4th in silver, ahead of Marco Lino. And it's going to be Darren Townsend just to take third position in AM, 18th across the line for the Welshman. He's battling illness, so that's a sterling effort from Darren Townsend, ahead of Jamie Thacker in 19th. Gordon Brown will be wondering once again what might have been in 20th. Flying Scotsman, who was the silver pole sitter, not being able to convert that into wins, ahead of Owen Harris and Luke Richings in 21st and 22nd. That's Serafina Gabino in 23rd. A pretty wretched evening for the Italian, ahead of Reeves. 24th, the silver the silver pro reserve driver, sorry, not silver pro, the silver reserve driver, I'm going to get the words out, ahead of Michael Coppins in 25th. Marshall took 26th, ahead of Miguel Silva, and Michel van der Waal, a victim of that pile-up, and rejoined from Vian Kruger a little bit earlier on. Jack Barnett's 29th, ahead of Terry Tierney. Bit of a delayed welcome to Formula Racing League for the Irishman, with Alexander Galugin, Darren Mark Davies and Vian Kruger to follow. See if we can get a hold of, I think it's going to be difficult, isn't it, to get a hold of. We're not going to be able to, are we, because we're not on track. So as Jared Vermeulen joins the party once again, and one of those that actually was not really wasn't a straightforward couple of wins, was it, Jared? Obviously, you had the issues on lap number 1, which we'll go to in race number 1 first of all, and obviously then the rather chaotic nature of race number 2. Talk me through lap number 1 first. Lap number 1, race number 1 first of all, as Greg Wood, formerly of this parish, also joins in. We'll speak to him very shortly in another eventful weekend. But Jared, what happened on lap number 1? We had a little bit of a replay, so the viewers have had a bit of a preview, but I want your view.
Yeah, so I've kind of given up the corner, right? I'm in control of my car at the apex, right? So, and so I'm not really in my championship rival due to his 2 bad races. So I was like, it's fine, I'll brake there, but I still got to brake in such a way that the other guy doesn't go around me too, right? So I still had to brake in a defensive manner. And I feel that honestly, there was the lightest of contacts. For me, it's a racing incident. I've looked at the replay after the race. I've stopped my car and all that. I didn't want to go over the curb, the inside curb, because my car, it's 50-50 on that, right? So not on the first lap. So for me, it was a racing incident. I think maybe I could have gone a tiny bit over the curb and not touched the curb, and I think he could have left me a bit more space there. He could have turned in a tiny bit later, because it was, end of the day, I'd given it up. So it was unfortunate. The lightest of contacts, but the hitbox on this game is unfortunate. Let's put it that way.
Suboptimal.
Yeah, suboptimal is the right word there. Like, for me, I don't know what else I could have done, really. In my mind, to me, it looks like a racing incident, and normally
Green light, give it all you got.
I can say if it's my fault, it's my fault, but for this one, I don't know. I think we both could have done a bit better.
So what happened in race number 2? So we caught that too, but it must have been a bit surprising when a fella just having his own accident, obviously then rebounds right into the path of the 2 leaders.
Yeah, man. So at that moment, I've seen it happen. So now I'm choosing. Do I go inside or do I go on the outside? And as we see him bounce off the wall, I think Travioli had the same idea as I do. Right? I was like 3/10 behind him. So he goes inside, and I'm like, okay, that looks as well the best way, because I think I was, the car will go across the track. So we both go for the inside, and he then taps Travioli on the rear. That spins him into the wall and down the track. And then I then go over the grass a bit to try and avoid him, but then from that contact, then it snapped him, the other way around, and then his rear hit my rear, and then spun me into the opposite wall. So it wasn't really nothing we could really do there. I think for both of us, as we both got caught up, it was just at the worst spot of the track where we have to make a decision. And I think no matter what, we were going to be caught up in an incident. If he chose the outside, he would have just hit dead on him, and then so, I don't know. It was unexpected, but at least I had 20 seconds of damage. I don't know how much damage he had, but I chose to carry on, soldier on. So again, I'm happy with the win. I felt my pace was good. I just couldn't overtake him in race 2. We were having a really good race where I was quicker than him, but I just couldn't force him into a mistake to pass. So I was just sitting there trying to wait for my opportunity. And quite honestly, I don't think it would have come. So I think I've lucked into a win here.
Fair enough. So we've got 2 drivers in here who've had some really chaotic evenings, but I'm going to go to Greg Wood, whose races didn't seem quite so chaotic. Greg, obviously, a couple of really strong class results for yourself and really strong overall results. So talk me through race number 1. First of all, you didn't quite manage to get the class win, but second place will do nicely at this stage of the championship.
Well, I don't think it's going to result in second place. There is a self-reporting ticket on its way. I'm going to extend my apologies to Andrew Eden for the start, going into the first chicane, misjudging a braking. I've turned him round, so I don't think I'm going to get to keep that second place. But I think I did help him out in race 2. I let him by, held off Brush Tully for him for a little while, and then did notice Brush Tully finished 0.8 behind him, so I hope that made the difference for him as a return gift. But in terms of my own results, very happy to qualify as high as I did. Tactics did not play in my favour against FaZe at the start. I wanted the inside, couldn't get it. Second time around, I planned for it. I started more central on the grid, and then quickly cut him off. And then obviously you saw how it ended up. We just held station for the remainder of the race. And that was pretty much it. I had a few pro drivers come through me, and bit of blue flags in the second race. The second race for me was boring, but a bit about management and just letting those through who I don't need to hold up.
We quite often last season in the commentary box spoke about tactics. So when you're an AM driver in front of a sea of pros, and silver drivers as well, obviously I know you beat every single silver driver, so well done to you for that, but when we spoke a lot about tactics, you often hear me about talking about fighting the right fights. Was it a case of again fighting the right fights in race number 2?
It really was. I'd already decided long beforehand if Eden caught up me, I was going to let him by, as I previously mentioned. With Brush Tully though, I knew I was going to hold my line and not defend too harsh. If he got ahead of me or got alongside me, I was going to let it go. So it wasn't so much that I was going to offer positions up, but I wasn't going to fight them either. With the pro drivers towards the end, Gearman, I thought I quite liked the idea of beating all the silver tier drivers, so I kept that going. And then I'm not sure if it was coordinated, if they talked to one another. Maybe Brown can confirm. He let Popperstill through to have a go at me, so and then that didn't work out for him. So quite chuffed to myself of holding those 2 off.
Well done.
Gordon, you had pole, didn't you, in in silver category, and you were in the top 6 or 7 when you were 7, I think it was, on the grid. You didn't manage to convert them into wins. I think I've seen roughly what happened in race number 1. But I want to talk to you about race number 2. What on earth happened? Because you were leading Silver by quite some way, and then all of a sudden you weren't. So what happened?
Okay, race 2. The server setup looks like it was somewhat glitched in terms of human error with programming, and the race time didn't load correctly. So I noticed this and reloaded my race 1 setup, which was fueled for 20 minutes and not 40 minutes. So I had to make a lovely unfancied one-stop strategy work for me. Yeah, I had to pit halfway through, and that's what happened.
Okay. Talk to me about race number 1 in that case, because that seemed a little bit more other people.
Yeah, so I mean, it's me. I'm looking forward to my first penalty this year. On the way into the first chicane, on lap 1, I put the right rear on the grass and drove straight into the back of Morgan Grace, spinning him round. I stopped to let him go, but unfortunately someone behind me clipped the back of my car and wedged me right against Grace. So neither of us could move until the whole field left, and that was the end of that one. I was trying to make up for it as well. I think second last lap I was side by side with an AM driver trying to come through the field, and there was a bit of contact between the two of us going into turn 3, which sent me backwards into the windmills actually in the background. So that was the end of race 1. Vermeulen overtook me there, actually lapped me on the final lap, which I was so happy about, carrying 1.5 minutes off damage. I was happy to only have to complete 1 lap and not 2. So that was a blessing in disguise. I finished, I got the points, and I think I may have the fastest lap in Silver as well, so consolation point there as well, I think, for race 1.
So you've obviously been, and you've shown throughout qualifying this season, that you're the quickest in Silver. Is it a bit frustrating that the last couple of races, or last couple of events, it's not quite translated into victories, and do you think that actually it's just a case of bad luck and the victories will come, or is it something that's on your mind?
I mean, I'm learning a new car this year, the Ferrari, and I'm learning that it's very OP in all the tracks we've been to so far. I think that's benefited, it's made me look stronger than I think what the performances in qualifying actually have been. But tonight was a personal best, which I beat every other time I've done in any other car with this one, so that I think was just not unexpected. But yeah, Bathurst hit a wall. It happens at Bathurst. The bravest wins, or you lose. Like that, those are the options. Tonight, just a series of what can I actually do wrong tonight, just to make sure I don't win. It seems, it just didn't go well tonight. All my errors, basically, human error. It happens. Move on to the next one.
Right, I'm going to end it there. Thank you, all 3 of you, so much for coming in and having a little chat at the end of the stream. We managed to actually get a replay of what happened on lap number 1 in the middle of the stream, so do make sure you watch the stream just for that, really. And we'll see you all next week for the next round number 4. I should have it on memory, but we'll see you next week for round number 4.
Snetterton.
We're at Snetterton, which is my home circuit, so I'll be off and over. I'll make the drive up myself and start commentating live from there in that case. But it's me to say, my name's Jack Prentice. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me, and we'll see you again next week.